Crash. It's now the unpoliceable ubiquity of the internet and the violence in video games that upsets the moral guardians and the more censorious of our society. Of course, in the very recent past, it was movies. There have been countless problematic movies since. There's been movies that haven't been awarded certification, but there's not quite been the fuss since Crash. I think Crash is probably the UK's last great big film scandal. So that is what I'm going to concentrate on tonight, its effect on the UK, as well as talking a little bit about Cronenberg. It was, of course, problematic around the world. Just in the States, Fine Line Features is a subsidiary of Ted Turner's big entertainment empire. Of course, he owns everything. When he found out his company were putting Crash out there, he went ballistic. It was a very, very limited run. It didn't do very well at all. Okay, the 90s were the decade where they had to look back on the last 100 years and also look forward millennium angst. All of these movies from Hollywood and from the independent sector, which of course the 90s was all about the independent sector. Silence of the Lambs, for example, and Cape Fear, they're both big budget, big starred movies that basically took, well, their motivations from horror movies. Of course, Reservoir Dogs, Tarantino came through. These all had their video releases held up in the UK in the wake of Dunblane. Basic Instinct, of course, mixed violence with eroticism like you've never seen before. And of course, there were all these movies, dismal Madonna Vehicle, Body of Evidence, that were trying to outbase dismal Sharon Stone Vehicle, Sliver, that were trying to out Basic Instinct, dismal Jade, and then the dismal but fabulous, really, Showgirls in 1995. All of them had problems with certification in the States. Then debuting at the Cannes Film Festival in 1996 came this movie. I love the tagline that accompanied some of the advertising, because the 90s were a time of pushing sensation and pleasure to the limits. At the beginning of the 1990s, a group of people, thanks to the effect of a drug called ecstasy, were predicting that this new age dawn was in reach. Also, there was a new drug, a legal drug, that promised to banish unhappiness forever, called fluoxetine, brand name Prozac. So that's how we entered the 90s. When we get to the mid-90s, and that had, of course, been discredited forever, I think Crash, the film, really reflects the kind of ambivalence of the decade. Okay, the narrative throughout Crash is played out in a series of increasingly claustrophobic sex scenes. The film begins with 3 sex scenes, one after the other, and then, apart from the sensation, it continues in this vein. It could, of course, only come from one man, David Cronenberg, in 1943. Now, he made 6 movies, beginning in 1975. Bear with me just one sec. Now, no one is really sure what genre David Cronenberg movies are. Are they horror? Are they sci-fi? Are they splatter? Are they high drama? Are they surrealism, for example? They are not easily pigeonholed. The Fly, of course, was one of his big sort of Hollywood movies, and Dead Ringers. Naked Lunch was an adaptation of William Burroughs' Naked Lunch, far less successful a translation than Crash. So he has his own genre, and it's called body horror. So it's more or less he invented it. Infection, disease, mutation, the merging of man and machine. These are Cronenberg's three occupations. Okay, in Shivers, a promiscuous resident of an upmarket Montreal apartment complex unleashes a horde of parasitic-like, they look like phallic turds. All Cronenberg movie have an ick moment. In Shivers, there are hundreds of them. They infect people with aphrodisiac and venereal disease, causing the whole apartment site to become the sort of site of mass sexual assault. After skin graft surgery in Rabid, Marilyn Chambers grows a penile barb in her armpit, which she then uses to infect Montreal with a very, very strong strain of rabies. In The Brood, a new drug given to patients with mental illness, which encourages mental illness to have symptoms in the body. Her illness runs so deep she gives birth to a pack of mutants that then run around after everyone she's wronged. In Videodrome, a strange signal from a TV. James Wood's body becomes, first very malleable. Debbie Harry says, "Kiss me." He puts his face to the TV screen. It gets sucked in. Absolutely excellent film. After Videodrome, he tended to move outside the body. It should be noted that Cronenberg's movies are psychologically complex. Now, J.G. Ballard, the author of Crash, it came out in 1973, and I think the one reviewer said beyond pornography when it came out. It's odd because it's just Cronenberg. The book was made for Cronenberg to make. It is all of his preoccupations, and it translates to the screen in a very, very straightforward, linear way. And it is absolutely considered unfilmable. J.G. Ballard absolutely loves the movie. He praised it a lot, and he said it was one thing for actually him to write all of these scenarios down. It was another one of them to be realised. He really did think it pushed the limits. Okay. In the cast, we have Elias Koteas, 1961 as Vaughan, and Deborah Kara Unger as Catherine. Both Canadian, both brilliant character actors. Elias Koteas went on to, he's been in quite a lot of he was in Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life. At the time, Deborah Kara Unger, absolutely brilliant in this film. Fantastic performance. She was getting offered everything in Hollywood. She didn't want it. She chose instead to work in the independents and do the films that she didn't do. She didn't go out to be a huge star. James Spader, he came through with Sexualizing Videotape, of course. Established himself as one of the leading men of the 90s. Good actor, he's not afraid of sexually explicit material or of exploring his dark side. He can currently be seen in the US version of The Office. Apparently he's very good in it, I haven't seen it. Holly Hunter. Now, Holly Hunter had just won her Oscar for The Piano. Another film about a sexual journey, but one that is very, very different. She wanted to work with Cronenberg for years. In between films, she contacted her agent and said, "Is Cronenberg up to anything?" She was back. Her agent was in contact with Cronenberg less than 24 hours after he sent the script out, saying Holly wants to play Helen Remington. And this was a very, very brave move for her because, like I said, she just won her Oscar for The Piano. Okay. The hoo-ha started, it can, when Alexander Walker, film critic for the London Evening Standard, submitted a scathing review. Now, it was in competition. There were boos and jeers at its screening and at the press conference. The jury, however, decided to make up a prize for it for originality, daring and audacity. Francis Ford Coppola, head of the jury that year, was quick to tell the press that it was not a unanimous jury decision. A lot of the jury did not agree with it. They did not agree with the movie. They were offended by it. They certainly didn't think it should be given any prizes. A sub-editor coined that. We were going to read that phrase a lot over the next year. That was the London Evening Standard. That was in the May. It didn't really get going until Crash opened the London Film Festival back November. when Christopher Tookie saw it. Now, he's the film critic for the Daily Mail. The really hit the fan here. He violently objected to the film, and pretty soon this became their manifesto. Cronenberg knew that this would be the most radical movie he would probably ever make, as did the cast, as did the distributors. They did not, however, foresee any problems with certification, because they've already had it penciled in for a January 1997 release. The Mail contacted their health secretary, Virginia Bottomley, and said, you know, we want to ban this violent car crash film. She said, oh, I agree with you, there's too much violence, except there isn't any violence in it, which is odd. They then contacted county councils, telling them to, you know, join, if the board do pass it, ban it in your own boroughs. This went on for about a year. Now, amongst all the fuss and nonsense, the BBFC postponed classification. I think they would have awarded it an 18 with no problem, straight off. Having said that, a lot of people who defended it at the time were, it's not intentionally shocking. I think it has got some imagery that's quite shocking, and I don't think that, I think that's to be celebrated. They say it's not titillating, it's not a turn on. This is true. However, I think any red-blooded male might find the first 30 seconds, for example, quite pleasurable. But it was hysteria. Even in a pre-internet age, you'd heard about Crash by December 1996. Other right-wing newspapers took up the Mail's calls, daily articles about the film, dominated the press. It was given coverage by all the magazines, by everybody. And it's not every film where you see three big stars mutually, well, you'll see. Okay, Tookie went on in his review. God forbid, Christopher. But you do expect that from the Daily Mail. Just as an aside, notice Cronenberg and the two lead actors are straight. They are not gay. The lesbian sex scene, lesbian sex scenes are of course prime target for exploitation. It's a cheap and easy way of getting the guys interested in a movie. Cronenberg here subverts that completely. The lesbian sex is actually the most loving in the film. It's completely unexplicit. Unusually, it's the homosexual sex scene that is a lot stronger. That's filmed in a lot more close-ups, it's a lot more brutal. Tookie, however, then made the unfortunate mistake of using these words. Okay, Rosanna Arquette as Gabrielle. Rosanna Arquette had come through in the early 80s with these movies. She has kind of quirky, kind of Scorsese's After Hours. She's absolutely fantastic in it. She kind of got overshadowed by her co-star in that one, which was widely dubbed overseas the Madonna movie, last time that one worked. She then came to live in Europe. So she actually left Hollywood at the height of her fame to come and live in the UK and in Europe. She actually lived in Bath with Peter Gabriel. And then, of course, she came back to Hollywood in the mid-90s to do two small performances in two of the biggest films of the 90s. Of course, this, and of course Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, where out of the principal cast, she's probably the smallest, the foul-mouthed piercing fetishist. Cronenberg did say that Crash actually played into a lot of what was going on at that time, piercing, scarification, for example. She's got two classic lines in the film that everybody remembers. One of them ends the famous heroin overdose scene, and one of them is John Travolta kind of says to her, sorry, I'm just curious, but why the fuck would you want to wear a stud in your tongue? Sex thing helps fellatio. I had mine done the next day. Okay, here she is on Crash. Now, It is Rosanna's sex scene which gives the film its once seen, never forgotten moment, and the scene that immediately precedes it that is the most problematic. In the first, it's Gabrielle's using of her own disability to embarrass somebody in a scene that is both humorous and cruel. And then, of course, the sex scene that comes immediately afterwards. Like an earlier scene of rough sex, it is completely consensual. I don't have any problem with it at all. God forbid, because this is what seemed to be the male's biggest problem, God forbid that we actually see a disabled person enjoying sex. Now, this actually helped the film's cause. Just to illustrate how non-sexy film sex are, in between takes when filming Crash, Rosanna would breastfeed her baby. And if you do ever bump into her, by the way, don't even think of bringing up Toto's soft rock anthem from 1982. When I look into your eyes, Rosanna, because it was written about her and she absolutely hates it. And you can't blame her. Okay, it was the disabled lobby's anger at Tookie's remarks that actually helped the film's case. In spring '97, the board consulted a forensic psychologist, a QC, and an audience of the disabled. The disabled were very, very steadfast that they did not want the able-bodied to feel embarrassed on their behalf. The QC concluded, rather than sympathising or identifying with the attitudes or taste of the characters in this film, the average viewer would in the end be repelled by them and would reject the sexual proclivities proclaimed. No shit, Sherlock. I mean, what did the objectors to this movie think was going to happen? I did not leave the cinema after seeing this movie at the showcase in '97. I actually saw this movie quite a lot of times at the cinema, and each time I left, I did not go on the way home, oh, get up to 100 and plough into that Robin Reliant. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. It is still banned in the city of Westminster. They can go ahead and say, no, it's banned in our district. This is completely ironic because the city of Westminster is, of course, where the London Film Festival was held. So when Crash screened on TV on Channel 4 in 2002, did that mean that everybody who had Channel 4 turned on in the city of Westminster could get busted? But it is still banned, and due to copycat behaviour. And this is what the Mail said when the board let it pass, with no cuts. Okay, when it was finally released, like I said, it didn't do very well. By this point, it was over a year since the Cannes Film Festival. People were fed up with it, really. I don't think the UK poster art was particularly inspiring either. It didn't make any money. It lasted a couple of weeks in cinema. Then it went away. It didn't actually make its budget back around the world, which is really unfortunate. It was only a low-budget movie, or mid-range budget movie, but remember, this is a Cronenberg movie. The cast certainly aren't asking for what they would normally get. They are all doing it for scale. And because Cronenberg is such an original, the crew are also the best in the business. The cinematographer, who makes everything here look like a bruise, he paints it in purples and darks, is Peter Shositsky, and he had just literally come off Tim Burton's multi-million-dollar Mars Attacks. Okay, that's only tipping the iceberg of the Crash controversy. This book, they held a screening in the Watershed in 1998 in town, 3 professors, and all of the findings from the Crash controversy were published in that book, which is still easily available. I was actually working on the front desk at the Watershed at the time, and